In an organization, let's say that there are 1,000 people working. Now, for the company, all the 1,000 people are resourceful house of talent. Keeping the human beings, the employees, as the employee-centric organization as we are talking about, we need to take care of the employee to the best level possible. The personal management was only concentrated upon the welfare of the people. Good morning and welcome to the second session in 4th semester BBA Unit 1, Human Resource Management, where we're going to continue with our introduction to the human resource management. In the previous sessions, we tried to understand about why we need to study human resource management, what is the role, what are the functions of human resource management. In the current session, we're going to talk about the objectives of human resource planning. We all know that for an organization's success, you need to plan your resources, and most importantly, when it comes to human resources, you can't take any chances. So when we start talking about the human resource planning, our first objective remains to ensure optimum utilization of human resources currently available in the organization. Let's try to understand this objective first. In an organization, let's say that there are 1,000 people working. Now, for the company, all the 1,000 people are resourceful house of talent. They're all unique. They have their own sets of skills and abilities. So it's for the organization to see that how we can make the best use of all the 1,000 employees who are working. So we need to ensure that we give them proper designation, we give them a proper role and an opportunity to grow inside the organization. Followed by which to assess and forecast the future skill requirement of the organization. Today, in the modern context, when we are seeing that technology taking the seat of driving forward the growth, we need to align ourselves as per the need of the environment, as per the need of the hour. So when it comes to the future skill requirement factor, organizations should be able to assess and understand what are the skills that are required for the employees to get themselves certified, to get themselves developed in those lines so that the organization can continue to move on to the next level. To provide control measures to ensure that necessary resources are available as and when required. Now this, I would say, is the biggest challenge for the organizations, because when you require people, you should have the resources with you. The modern time period, most of the companies feel that we do not even have projects coming in while we need to recruit. And suddenly when a project comes in, we feel that we don't have the necessary resources, the human resources through which we can execute the project. So the organization needs to draw a balance, try to understand as and when the requirement pops up, you should be able to take care of it, you should be able to drive it, and you should be able to see that there are growth in terms of opportunities and in terms of delivery of the project. A series of specified reasons are there which attaches importance to the manpower planning in the current context. As we move further, we also like to talk about linking the manpower to the organizational planning to determine the recruitment levels, to anticipate the redundancy, to determine the optimum training levels, to provide management development programs. All these things are the objectives of human resource planning, which means to say that keeping the human beings, the employees, as the employee-centric organization as we are talking about, we need to take care of the employee to the best level possible. We need to provide them with all the opportunities, with all the training, and we need to enhance their skill so that they are able to match to the requirements of the organization. As we move further, we also need to talk about the cost of the manpower. Now, whenever you are recruiting people into the organization, there is a cost factor associated, what we call it as CTC, cost to the company. So one needs to assess it, one needs to find out where we can increase the productivity, the future accommodation of requirement, to study the cost of overhead, the value of service functions. All those factors really matter a lot in terms of growth, in terms of aspect. Now, with all those things, we would start understanding the most important factor as whether the activity needs to be subcontracted or not. So which means to say that as human resource factor, you need to start working upon how and when system needs to be built, how and when the people needs to be given on in terms of managing the entire contracts altogether. So this is where the objectives of human resource planning comes into picture. Now, similarly, the main difference between we're going to talk about is personal management and that of human resource management. Gone are the days when people always used to talk about HR as a sidelined operation of the organization. HR is today the mainstream of any organization, and it was. But some days back, some years back, when I'm talking about, there was this word called as personal management, which means to say that the personal management was only concentrated upon the welfare of the people. But we were not considered about the overall development of the organization, aligning the people to the goals and visions of the organization. So as we move further, we need to start understanding how the behavior of a worker, of an employee, is associated with the organization. Let's say, for an example, I'm working in a multinational bank in India. My organization, as in the bank, would require me to have certain characteristics, certain traits which match to the organizational policy. Now, I might be coming from different backgrounds. I might be coming with different educational qualification. I might have a different set of work experience altogether. But as human resource management speaks about this core concept of aligning people to the organization, one needs to understand we're not just looking into the welfare, but we also need the employee to be groomed, to be trained in such a manner that he is able to get himself completely immersed into the organizational factor. So the orientation of making that employee understand the policy, the vision, the mission is where the human resource management's key criteria comes into. So let's try to understand the difference between a personal management and a human resource management. So when we start with the personal management, we are only going to talk about on a limited approach, whereas a human resource management is going to have a lot more extension, a wider perspective to the organization. So moving further, let's try to compare each other so that we are able to understand how does it work. The personal management, we are concerned with the workforce relationship with the entity. That's it. Now, for example, I'm working as a cashier in a bank. So my role is limited to handling of cash transactions inside the bank. So I'm not concerned about the bank's growth or the goals and alignment and other factors. So I'm only concerned about my role within the organization. Whereas in human resource management, I am trying to make that cashier understand what is the importance, the significance of your role to the organization. You might be a cashier, but there is some importance about cash management. There's also some importance about ethics, rules, behavior. How do you move with your colleagues, with your co-workers? All those things is where it gets focused in human resource. So primarily, I'm enhancing the scope of understanding an employee. The second one, this is always traditional, whereas this one is a modern asset altogether, the modern way of doing it. Now, when we look into the personal management, it's more about machines or tools. Here we are talking about human as an asset altogether. This is a routine function. This is a strategic function. Personal management is something which is just like a timetable drawn upon, whereas human resource management is strategic. Why? Because it involves thinking, it involves forecasting, it involves understanding the underlying risk that you take in terms of recruiting somebody, in terms of executing a project, in terms of assigning somebody with the roles and responsibilities. Similarly, here it is only about job evaluation when I talk about personal management. So when, let's say that you're working in railways as a station manager, or you're going to work as an engine driver, you're going to work in some capacities, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to evaluate your job based on your role. That's it. Whereas in case of human resource, I want to evaluate your performance. Now this word is very important as we speak in HRM. Reason being is that performance is not a single stone or a single page kind of a workout that we are talking about, but performance is more about different metrics that need to be aligned to understand the overall development of an employee. Now, a person may or may not perform due to n number of reasons. But then, as an organization, one needs to understand what are all the key performance area or the key success factors, the key criteria through which we can evaluate what needs to be taken, how it needs to be measured, so that the employee is given a fair feedback and an opportunity to improve himself. So that's where performance evaluation forms a very important part of the human resource management. Followed by which we start talking about transactional versus transformation. When I talk about a transactional factor, this is more to do with just the give and take factor, whereas transformation is more about bringing on to the future. This is an indirect method. This is a direct method, which means I'm going to talk directly to the employee, make him understand what is important here. Collective bargaining contracts, the union concept, where 100 people join hands together to get one thing, whereas here it is individual. Your performance is done by you, which means to say that you are responsible for your performance. This is a piecemeal, this is a wholesome, which means to say it's an integrator. This is more of procedure oriented, and this is of the business need. So that's exactly where I differ when it comes to personal versus human resource. In a human resource management, I'm more concerned about what the business wants. Now that's exactly what organizations are talking about. We are not just talking about working in an organization or in a company from 9 to 5, clocking 8 hours or 9 hours every day. But what I'm worried about is, what does the business need? What do you need to transform yourself to deliver the best? So that's what is the business need of the organization. Quite a slow process, quite a fast process. Division of labor, and this is about groups and teams. Now, division of labor, this is one thing quite interesting as we speak about in the Indian context. Why? Because we are more considered about that department, sectors, supervisors, managers, workflow, all those kind of factors. But then as human resource, I always believe that there are teams, there are groups in the company, and each one of us belong to a group, and the group entirely belongs to the organization. So that's more important here. This is something which is very, very common, the same routine that we are talking about, but this has got something to do more with the modern values. So that's how you see that personal management and human resource management differ in their various aspects. Now, moving further, let me also try to bring in the definition for you in personal management. Part of the management which deals with recruitment, hiring, staffing, development, compensation of the workforce, relation to the organization to achieve its objectives. Now, in personal management, what happens is that the aim is to recruit a person according to the need of the organization, fit him to that role, pay him a compensation, and ask him to work according to the organizational needs. That's all is personal management. So I'm not going to go into a strategic part of thinking saying that why this person, what kind of person, why this person can add value, why this person cannot add value. I'm not getting into that. I'm just going to say that a person is recruited, he's going to be paid, and he's going to match according to the organizational needs. Followed by which, what is human resource department, the structures part we are talking about. HR department are subject to the unique requirements, scales, and ethos of organization. So we are going to now understand from a modern perspective how the HR structure comes into the organization and how it differs accordingly. First one that we're going to talk about is a centralized structure. Now, in a centralized structure, The HR operations are consolidated under a singular department situated at the corporate apex. Quite a simple one. Why? Because today, if you look into banks or if you look into railways, you would typically see that there is a corporate or a head office where the HR manager or the HR head would be sitting. They will completely coordinate and take over the HR activities and the centralized process, which means to say that one-stop decision is taken there and you don't have any rights to do at a branch level. Everything will be taken at the head office level. This configuration guarantees coherence in HR policies, procedures throughout. Why? Because one single input that goes on as an output for all the branches, and you are not going to argue or you're not going to comment against it. It is going to be a uniform way of passing on the information. But then we also have a structure called as decentralized. In larger organization boasting multiple units or division, HR structure might be different altogether. Now let's take a company like Nestle, or let's take a company like Hindustan Unilever, or we take a company like Microsoft, which means to say that these are large corporate organizations which have their unique way of working. Each team, each vertical will have their own requirements, will have their own policies, they will have their own structure, how they operate. So the HR will also be structured depending on the nature of business, the type of vertical and the deliverables that come onto the table. So the HR department would be more decentralized, would be more located to the business specific needs of the organization. Followed by which we talk about shared services structure, an innovative approach in organization where we blend from centralized and decentralized, which means to say a combination that we are going to follow in the long run. Now, what is a matrix structure where you would start seeing that organizations, HR professionals may find themselves both as a part of the main team as well as a part of the project. So in IT companies, what happened? You will have a main HR, that is a person who's been sitting in the central part of the organization, the head office altogether. Plus, there would be a HR related to that project. So that will be a matrix reporting altogether where you would see that there is a core team and then there is a project team. So they need to get aligned in different factors. So the policies are shared across, and at the same time, the business unit needs are also worked upon. Now, the outsourced structure, which is quite normal these days, coming into picture. Now, let's look into certain organizations who do not have time or who do not have that pace in terms of running the HR payroll and scale and administration. What do? They outsource the entire thing to organization and concentrate on the core strengths of the company, which means to say that this is exactly where I'm coming into. There are organizations where they feel that HR is not my capability. I'm more concentrated on certain technical aspect. Let me outsource the HR function to an organization, to a unit located somewhere at a part of the world. Let them take care of my functions, let them take care of my payroll, my administration and other features so that I can concentrate on my core business. But this is also a kind of model that is coming into picture. The major reason being that you can do a lot of cost cutting and you don't have to worry about the functions altogether. There are experts who can deliver as per your needs. With this, I come to the end of today's session. I hope and believe that all the facts and figures that we have spoken in today's session would be of a great use to you, both in terms of theory and in practical walk of life. In the upcoming sessions, we are going to get into the modern HRM methods. We're going to talk about job evaluation and the different perspectives of performance appraisals. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed. You have a great day ahead. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.